It's yet another NFL preview here on Sports by the Book. I'm Jeff Parles. She is Alex White. And Alex, today we head to Detroit, Michigan. The Lions coming off their best regular season in franchise history. Obviously, it ended with a thud in the divisional weekend against the Washington Commanders, but expectations high yet again up in Motown.
We're going to find out how good of a coach Mr. Dan Campbell is, loses both coordinators this year. And as you mentioned, high expectations and a very tough schedule. Of course, first place in the division last year. Then they're matched up. They have the NFC East and the AFC North. It's not going to be an easy road for the Lions.
It will not for Detroit, who has won the division 2 consecutive years. When realignment came in 23 years ago, they had not won the NFC North until 2023. They've won it back-to-back years. That's the first time in franchise history they won back-to-back divisional titles as well, and they're favored to do it for a third consecutive year. Now, their win total is 10.5. It's actually just under minus 140 on the 10.5, over 10.5 plus 120. So that is a 5-game regression on the under if they went under 10.5. To make the playoffs, yes, minus 190, no, plus 170. To win the North for the third consecutive year, plus 150, 5-1 to win the NFC, 12-1 to win it all for the NFC North. Favorite Detroit Lions.
When you put it that way, that is pretty crazy. 5-game regression there. And I can imagine it's a little bit of regression. Listen to these road games they have this year. Kansas City, Philly, Ravens, Washington, Cincinnati, and the LA Rams. So those are 6 road games that they have. And I didn't even mention any division opponents. So it's going to be a tough road for the Lions. I think that's why they have such a low win total, but really just plus 150 to win the division, even though they are, if you go position by position, the best power rated team, I would say, in this division.
Well, and look, for Detroit, and of course, week 1, you didn't mention the Green Bay game. Week 1, available here on the $25,000 guaranteed Pro Football Kickoff Weekend Jackpot Parlay card here at the South Point, $5. As many cards as you want. Just make sure it's in by 10 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday, the 7th of September, before the games on that Sunday get going. Lions and Packers, the premium 125 Pacific, 425 Eastern kickoff. I just want to do a little bit of compare and contrast real quick for Detroit from last year on the schedule. Last year, the Lions played a grand total of 3 outdoor games. 3. Green Bay, San Francisco, Chicago. That's it.
Wow.
Every other one, Arizona, Dallas, Minnesota, Houston, Indy, and obviously all their home games, roof. This year, you go on the road, as you mentioned. Green Bay, obviously the divisional games in Green Bay and Chicago obviously are always outside. That's 2. Baltimore, that's 3. Kansas City, that's 4. Washington, 5. Eagles, 6. So, yes, 6 is still a low number. Oh, and I forgot the Bengals. That's 7.
Yep.
So 7 outdoor road games this year of the 9. Obviously, Minnesota will likely be inside all the way in that last Thursday night regular season game of the year in week 17. And then the Rams will be in, well, technically the Rams are outside, but let's be real. That's an indoor-outdoor stadium with ideal conditions more times than not. So it is a whole different ball of wax for Detroit this year, and you mentioned it. The schedule is insane. The schedule is absolutely and utterly insane. But they can start 3-1 pretty easily. They're a small dog at Green Bay week 1, but they won at Lambeau Field last year in less than idyllic conditions. Remember, that was a rain game last year, and Detroit won the game handily. Yeah, Jordan Love turned the ball over multiple times, but yes, the Lions still won the game on the road outside. They're going to be a favorite week 2 at home against Chicago, a game that they should win. As much as I love the Bears going into the year, that's a game Detroit's got to have. All right, they'll be a dog at Baltimore week 3. All right, fine, whatever. If you lose a road game against one of the AFC powers, you can't really be aggravated with that. And then they're going to be a huge favorite at home against Cleveland week 4. So getting off to the 3-1 start is gigantic because the next 3 weeks before the bye week, at Cincinnati, coin flip game, at Kansas City, Chiefs will be favored. Tampa, a team that Detroit lost to at home last year, if you remember all the way in week 2, and a team that That was a one-score playoff game 2 years ago when those two teams played at Ford Field in the divisional round in the 2023-2024 playoffs. Not easy. And again, I mean, look at that stretch. You play Washington and Philadelphia 2 straight.
Right.
The last 4 games, 3 of them on the road. The only home game is Pittsburgh. Again, we don't know what Pittsburgh is going to be. That could be an extraordinarily difficult game, or that could be a pretty easy game. We don't know. But Alex, this is a horrific schedule. One of the toughest in the NFL. Again, the Giants still take the cake for that.
Yep.
But the talent is there. But boy, I understand why the books have juiced us to the under, even with a 5-game regress to under 10.5 because of that schedule.
I definitely do too, but I have absolutely no interest in putting my money on that under 10.5. I just think Dan Campbell is too good of a coach, and he has built this roster, and they're just a solid team that can really compete with any of these high-end teams. And we saw it last year. I mean, it was just game after game blowing teams out. So tough schedule up until they have to see the Eagles. We don't know about the Giants. And then Thanksgiving against the Packers. Not going to be easy. We'll see where the Packers are at that point, but that's always a really good game. And then I think it gets a little bit easier where they can get a little fat and happy and maybe cushion this record a little bit going into the playoffs. Last 5 games will kind of be the make or break for them with this win total. But I would be shocked if they don't make the playoffs.
So let's look at the offense here, Alex. Again, Ben Johnson, now the head coach of the Chicago Bears. So John Morden, in his second stint in Detroit, was there with Campbell early in the Campbell tenure as a senior offensive assistant, went to Denver to follow Sean Payton, who he'd been with in New Orleans in the past. In Denver, was the pass game coordinator there last year, now comes back. This is the second time John Morden has been a play caller in the NFL. The other time was with the 2017 Jets, which, all things considered, that was a team that was projected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. They went over their win total with a 5-win season, just shows how bad it was. And Josh McCown was the primary quarterback, but the Jets' offensive numbers that year were closer to league average than they were bottom tier. So Morden, again, he's not Ben Johnson. I don't know if anyone is as an offensive play caller, but this was not a bad hire. It's just a question of, all right, how long does this get off the ground with going from arguably the best play caller in the NFL the last 2 years to a guy who, all right, who's only called plays once in his NFL career, wasn't horrible at it, but this is a whole different animal with a whole different ball of expectations with this Detroit offense, which still has Jared Goff,
right?
Still has Jahmyr Gibbs, still has Amon-Ra St. Brown, still has Jameson Williams, still has David Montgomery, still has a beast of an offensive line.
The one question mark, even more than the OC and Ben Johnson, I think, is the center, right? With Frank Ragnow retiring kind of unexpectedly. And now they have 2 new pieces on that O-line. And that's part of the reason why Ben Johnson could get so creative and do so much with Gibbs and Montgomery and have Jared Goff do all these trick plays. So it's a matter of how good this O-line stands up and can protect their quarterback there. But I do think that they draft really well. I think that they will fill the pieces in. And I like the fact that John Morton was there at the beginning building the offense around Jared Goff with Ben Johnson. So you're right. Went to Broncos, now comes back. So we'll see how that turns out. But all in all, I still think it's a very highly rated, power rating wise offense.
Look, their tackles are still, now with the injury out in LA, you look at these tackles and, all right, this is the best. You have the best right tackle in the NFL, no argument. And you're betting favorite to be the protector of the year, which is kind of shocking to me. As great as Penei Sewell is, a right tackle being the favorite for protector of the year seems kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
But that's just a testament to how highly looked at Penei Sewell is. Hey, but his arms were too short. That's why he fell in the draft, right? Ridiculous nonsense with that. And Taylor Decker's an under the radar because everyone's eyes are on Sewell. Decker's an awesome left tackle. So he's on the board at 55-1 as the protector of the year over at FanDuel.
Veteran and a leader.
I'm not overly concerned about the middle of that O-line just because of how strong the ends are. I'm really not concerned about Graham Glasgow taking over at center because Ragnow had been dealing with injuries for a few years now, as it was. Tate Ratledge, their second-round pick, will play right guard. I'm a little more concerned about, again, a rookie coming in on that O-line, but it's the right situation to be going into. My biggest concern with the offense is that when will we see the Jared Goff regression that we saw in LA? Where, look, Sean McVay is as good of an offensive mind as there's ever been in the league. And Goff fell off a cliff with him to the point that Stafford-Goff deal, which the rare NFL trade that works for everybody, which it totally has. Rams won their Super Bowl. Lions are in an unprecedented level of success for that franchise at the current moment. I just am concerned at some point there's going to be Jared Goff regression. Now that could come 3 years from now. That could never come. But new play caller, I just wonder with those first 3 games where I just said earlier, it is so important to go 2-1 in those first 3. So you smack around Cleveland and they're 3-1 going into that Bengal Chief back-to-back. You can't be working out the kinks early this year. You got to be ready to go, and you got to win either at Green Bay or at Baltimore to really just make sure that this doesn't spiral early. That's my concern, Alex. The talent is still there. The line is still great. You have a top 5 wide receiver, and you have a top 3 running back room. But it's just a matter of, does the Jared Goff regression at some point strike? Because we saw it in the playoff game. There were bad decisions made in that game by Goff. And in a game that was so high scoring, Detroit's defense, they could have gotten a stop or 2. I get that. But look, in a game where you had the match, Goff did turn the ball over in that game.
So last year, completed 72.4% of his passes. He's pretty much second in everything, right? 4,600 yards for him, 37 touchdowns, just 12 INTs. I don't hate it that thinking new OC and a new full-time center there, that could be the turning point. But I don't think he showed any true signs of it, just a glitch here and there in a couple games. But let's go to the defense. Where they are deciding to run it back with most of the same guys, even though I can't see why not. They had so many injuries from the very start of last year. So new defensive coordinator, of course, Aaron Glenn's now the head coach of the New York Jets. Kelvin Shepard takes over as the defensive coordinator for the Lions. And, it's just really by the end of last year, they were so injured last year. By the way, this will be the first time that Shepard has called defensive plays, period, in his coaching career. He has actually been a coach for a long time because he was a former player in the league. So, of course, last year, you have all those injuries at the end. Alan McNeil, who I would argue is, other than Hutchinson, who, of course, they get back after the Grizzly leg break in Dallas last year. McNeil was their most important interior lineman. He's not going to be ready for week 1 because of the injury he suffered last year. Wingo is still hurt. Pascal is still hurt. Rodriguez, who ended up being a key piece on a defense, is still injured, not going to be ready for week 1. But they get Aiden Hutchinson back, which is the biggest deal of all. Hutchinson, who I think should be the favorite, odds on as comeback player of the year, and should be the favorite and is the favorite in the defensive player of the year market, plus 275 on a comeback. And about 6-1 on the defensive player of the year side of things. 7-1, I should say, on Hutchinson. He is a star when he is out there. They have really good linebackers in Anzalone and Jack Campbell, who, again, we all hated the pick when it happened. But Campbell has been a high-impact player in that defense, the first-round pick out of Iowa. They reworked their secondary a little bit. They bring in DJ Reed, which I think is an improvement over what they had back there in the past. Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, still back there, great safeties. Arnold, Reed, Robertson is with Avonte Maddox, also the boot for depth, is a great cornerback combination. It just comes down to the coaching for me more than anything. How are they with a first-time defensive coordinator in Kelvin Shepard? This defense should be like it was for the bulk of last year, not what we saw in the playoff game, which was obviously an epic disaster against Washington. And you rattled through a bunch of those guys that were injured last year. By the end, it was 6 defensive starters and several key backups on the IR. So I think with a team that ended up going 15-2 in the regular season, and yes, by the end, 4 of their final 6 games, they gave up 30-plus points. They got to tighten that up. They got to get everybody back. You mentioned it, a few guys, it's going to take a few weeks. But I think it's tough to bet against them, even with the coordinator changes. I just think their culture has been completely shifted since Dan Campbell's got there. It's not like Nick Sirianni and the Eagles when they did go through their coordinator changes. You had a lot of divas, a lot of guys, kind of not team guys, more eye guys. It took a while for them to really gel together. I just feel like this Lions team is all in, ready to run through the wall for Dan Campbell. And I don't think there'll be a huge drop off. Now, 10.5, it's a tough schedule. I'm not dying to go bet the over by any means, but I do think that they're going to make the postseason.
Yeah, there's not enough teams for me to say, hey, they're going to go from 15-2 to missing the playoffs. I'm not there, but this schedule is crazy. You have 2 games on this schedule. It's like, all right, it would take a disaster to lose these games. Cleveland at home and the Giants at home. Those are the only 2 games on the schedule I look at. I'm like, all right, well, I don't see the path for the opponent. I see the path for the opponent in the other 15. Now, I'm not saying Detroit's going to go 2-15 or anything lunatic like that. But there are a lot of coin flip games on this schedule for a team with as much talent as Detroit has. I expect them to make the playoffs. I don't expect them to win the NFC North again. I think there'll be a new champion, and that new champion is coming from the bottom of the board, as I mentioned on our Chicago Bear preview. So I'm going under 10.5 on the Lions, but I do like them to make the postseason. So you can do some, again, it's kind of counterintuitive, but if they go over 10.5, guess what? They're making the playoffs. So if they win 11 games, they're not missing the playoffs. So I actually don't mind figuring out the math correctly and going under and then taking a little bite of the apple to just make the postseason. They should be the favorite to win the division going in. They still are the most talented team, but that schedule and the change of the coordinators scares the living daylights out of me, Alex. That's why I have them as a wild card team as opposed to a division champion. I have no problem with them being the second favorite in the conference. I have no problem with them being one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. But in the end, it feels like 2023, you're up 17 in the NFC Championship game against the Niners. And as this game is cruel. Sometimes as good as Detroit was a year ago, they went one step less than they did the year before. You sometimes just have to take advantage of that one-off window. We've seen it through the history of sports of teams doing it. The Lions may not have, and that scares me too, Alex. So Lions playoff team, but not as dominant as a year ago.
I mean, this is a division that had 3 playoff teams last year, and I expect it to be highly competitive. Once again, I do just still have the Lions number 1 in this division, but I didn't really find any best bets. Aiden Hutchinson, we've talked about him. Yeah, we can
go with that.
I'll go with Aiden Hutchinson, defensive player of the year or comeback player of the year.
I would prefer comeback personally. I would bet that now because if he comes out and has a big game week 1, forget it. The numbers are going to be gone. So Hutchinson, comeback player of the year. I like that more than defensive player of the year. It's a less stacked award because realistically speaking,
True.
Dak, McCaffrey, it's hard to really go much more. I mean, Godwin is an interesting one at 40-1, but
those two you just mentioned.
I mean, it's Dak and
nervous.
Aiden. I mean, it's just those two guys.
Or even CMC.
Yeah.
If he can play the entire year,
a huge
imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine.
We'll get into it on the Niner preview as well. But I like Aiden Hutchinson, comeback player of the year. I think that's the best bet on the board for any of the awards, period, actually. Him and Abdul Carter are my 2 favorites going into the year, as I mentioned on the Giants preview with the defensive rookie of the year. And there is Tyreek Williams all the way at the bottom for the Lions at 75-1 available. All right. That's been the Detroit Lion preview. Again, we're getting to the nitty gritty here. We're getting to the high-end teams here on the previews, 10.5s across the board. Alex, going to be a tough go for the Lions, even though, again, they still should be in the postseason yet again here in 2025. She's Alex White. I'm Jeff Parles. This has been yet another NFL preview here on Sports by the Book. We're live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern on the Sports by the Book YouTube page, live from the South Point Hotel and Casino, South Point Studio here in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you're hitting subscribe to Sports by the Book and South Point Studio as well. She's Alex. I'm Jeff. We'll see you on the next preview. This has been the Detroit Lions preview for the 2025 season here on Sports by the Book.